Welcome to Slaying Excel Dragons video number 46. Hey, these are the videos that accompany the book. We are still in chapter 6. Our topic is advanced filter for extracting records. We're going to see 12 amazing examples. Now, in last video, we looked at filter, which was great for filtering a data set and copying and pasting. Advanced filter is similar but allows more complex criteria and is really built to extract records and put them somewhere else. Let's go over to our workbook. So we're going to have 12 examples here, and we're just going to have a small data set because we want to talk about all the different types of criteria and how you have to set them up. Now, the first thing, let's compare and contrast what we're going to do with advanced filter. And by the way, data ribbon over here, there's the filter. There's advanced filter. Let's compare and contrast here. When you have a data set like this, when you turn on the filter, right, there's drop downs. And then you set your criteria using this drop down. I'm going to turn that back off. With advanced filter, our criteria is not going to come from that drop down. The criteria is going to come from the cells. We actually have to set up a separate area. I'm going to call it criteria area. And the most important thing is the field names have to be exactly the same as the field names down in the data set. Now, field names criteria area, the same as the data set. And that means no extra spaces like that. I'm going to click Escape. If you have extra spaces or spell it wrong, advanced filter will not know from the criteria area where you want it to go. If you have product with a space here, it can't match against product without a space down here. So very important. All right. The other thing about advanced filters, we can set up, because we can list our criteria in cells, we can list a bunch of criteria and do really complex criteria. And the original data set, when we run our advanced filter, will remain intact, meaning no rows will be hidden, and then we'll dump our data somewhere else. All right, we're going to start off simple and just go through all the different types of criteria you could have for extracting data. Here's our data set. I've set my field names up, and the criteria is please give me all of the records where the product is Bellin. All right, now you click in one cell in the data set, and I'm going to go to advanced filter. Now there's a few keyboard shortcuts. You could use the old 2003 one, Alt and then D for data, and then F for filter, and then A for advanced filter. Sometimes that one's easy because data, filter, advanced. Those are the initials. Alt DFA. Now, when I got to 2007, I compared, because I had this memorized. I'd go Alt DFA. And I went through all the keyboard shortcuts I use all the time, and then I compared that one. That's 3 letters. I compared it to the new one, Alt, and then A for data, and Q. Now, the reason why I switched over to AQ is because the keyboard shortcut Alt-AQ is not only shorter by 1 letter, but the letters A and Q are right next to each other. So it just was a much faster way. So that's the one I'm going to use in the video, Alt-AQ. Now, here's the other big difference between filter and advanced filter. We have a dialog box. There's 4 different sections, or 5 different sections if you include this one. First is filter in place or copy to another location. I basically never use this. Most of the time, if I'm going to do filter in place, I try to use the built-in filter. So I'm going to copy it to another location. List range, that's the table. And as with all of the data analysis features in Excel, data set has to have field names in the first row, records in rows. Criteria range. That is where our criteria comes from. I'm going to highlight field names and any criteria below. Copy to, that's the next section. I'm going to click in cell A22. I just put this label here. Usually you don't have an area like that. But just to emphasize, there's 3 things you have to have. Data set in the cells, criteria range in the cell, and then somewhere you want to extract. So action, I'm always going to do copy to another location. Table, criteria, copy to. We'll look at this one later, but right now I'm going to click OK. And just like that, it extracts our records. That's one criteria. Let's go over to AF2. And now we're going to look at two criteria. Now, we have learned so far in the class a lot about criteria. There's AND, which means both criteria have to come out with true in order for the record to be extracted or the thing to be counted or whatever. And we know OR criteria. That means one or the other gets a true, and that means we want to extract the record. Now, for AND criteria, the AND criteria goes on the same line. Now, here, our criteria happens to be from two separate fields. So we just put our criteria here and here, and advanced filter will know that it has to find a sunset in the product field, and it has to find greater than 500 in this field in order for our records to be extracted. So let's see how to do this. Click in one cell, Alt-AQ, copy to another location. The list range, it guessed right because our data set is set up correctly. Notice also that I have a blank here. I didn't put this word data, which is in cell A7. I didn't put it next to the data set, or it would be included as part of the data set. Criteria, field names exactly the same as the table with criteria below. I simply highlight. Copy to. I'm going to click right here and click OK. And just like that, we have sunsets and greater than 500. So this is like the 5th or 6th or 7th time we've been running AND criteria like this. And as before in all of our examples, literally it went through, and every time it found a true and a true for the record, it knew to extract it. If there were not two trues, true, false, didn't get extracted. All right, so that's AND criteria. And the thing to remember, AND criteria goes on the same row. Let's go over to A3, AF3. OR criteria. Now we see OR. OR has to be listed on different lines. So this is two criteria, but this is OR. That means it can go through this column, and it asks the question, is this Carlota false? Is this Belen false? So that record's not extracted. Is this Carlota true? As soon as it sees one true, it knows to extract that record. The advanced filter dialog box knows it's OR because they're on different lines. And by the way, if you have ever used Access, you can set up access criteria on different rows or different lines also. All right, let's see how this works. Alt-AQ. I'm going to copy to another location. It's got my data set, the criteria range. Notice I'm highlighting two rows below. By the way, you can have many rows here if you have many criteria. Copy to. I'm going to click right there and click OK. I just love that. Look at that. There's our data set. That's OR. Now let's go to AF4. And now we get to see and OR criteria. So here we have OR. But we also, our question here, if you're saying it in English, it's, hey, please give me all the records that have quad and are greater than 1,000, or Belen and greater than 1,000. Another way you could say it is, hey, give me all of the quad or Belen records that have, give me all the records that have quad or Belen and are greater than 1,000. Now notice what we had to do here. We had to repeat our AND criteria. So both of these, this is going to be the OR, but because the same AND criteria is present for both records, we have to repeat it. So or one of these two criteria, and has to be greater than 1,000. Notice also we put the greater than or the comparative operator in the cell. Notice we put notice we put the comparative operator, in our case greater than symbol, in the cell with the number. Notice it's aligned to the left also. That means it's considered text, which is perfect for our advanced filter. I'm going to click in one cell, Alt-AQ. Copy to, actually, we could, after a while, you might get the hang of doing the O. So it would be Alt-O, and then Tab, Tab, criteria range, tab, copy to range, and then it's highlighted already in black, so I can just hit enter. And there it gives me my OR criteria, and both records are greater than 1,000. And so this starts to give you an idea that you really can build up a bunch of quite complex criteria. Now we're going to talk about between criteria. I'm going to go over to the sheet AF5. Now, between criteria. Let's say we would like to extract all the records between 900 and 1,200. First thing you want to notice is that I actually made a mistake in the book. This is greater than or equal to 900 and greater than 1,200. It should be less than. Now that's between criteria, right? Because all the numbers are greater than this or equal to that and less than that. So between criteria. Now remember earlier in the book we talked about between criteria. It is an AND criteria. And when you're using advanced filter, if it's AND, the criteria have to be on the same row. Further, if the criteria and criteria, between criteria, are both on the same field, you have to repeat the field names. Now here's how it goes, just like we saw earlier in the class. The first question is, this sales number right here, is it greater than or equal to 900? False. Next question, is this greater than or equal to 900? True. Is it less than 1,200? True. So that record is extracted. All right, so repeat the field names when you're doing between criteria, and there's two true-false statements or questions about each individual record in a single field. All right, let's run this. Alt-AQ, copy to another location, criteria range, copy to, and I'm going to click right there and click OK. And there we have the 3 records. Now, in the book, it's just not correct. In the book, if you ran it like this, then the only thing that gets matched is all the records greater than 100, because I mean that criteria is basically useless. All right, but that's the way we should do it, to do between criteria. All right, let's go look at our next example on sheet AF6. Oh, here's another great example. Common data extraction criteria. You want to extract between 2 dates. Remember, this is between. We know that dates are serial numbers. If it's between criteria, which is AND criteria, they have to be on the same row for advanced filter. And you have to repeat the field names if the 2 true-false questions are about just one field. All right, so we have this set up. Let's Alt-AQ. I'm going to copy to another location. The criteria range is here. Copy to. I'm going to click right there and click OK. And just like that, we have between 2/1/2011 and 5/31. There are the records. So between date criteria. Another thing, realize that the date we saw in our last example, we put our comparative operator right next to a number. Here with date, you just put your comparative operator right next to the date, right in the cell. Of course, as we've talked about a few times, it's aligned to the left, which Excel considers it text. But for criteria, that is absolutely fine. All right, let's go over to our next example, AF7. Now, this example is where we extract data from a data set. And I'm going to go over to my extract sheet. We're going to be working back and forth between these 2 sheets. I want my data to go on this sheet. So extract. I'm going to go back over to AF7. But your data set is here. The only trick is if you start your advanced filter here, it will not let you go over to the sheet. So if the end result is the data has to go on a separate sheet, just start the advanced filter on the extract sheet. I'm going to try that again. I'm going to click right here, Alt-AQ. Notice it's all blank because it doesn't see a data set copied to another location. And here is where list range goes. You have to click on the sheet. Actually, why don't I move this down here? Click on the sheet. And then I'm going to highlight the entire data set, including the field names. Remember, the field names at the top and the data set communicate with the field names listed in the criteria area. So don't forget those. Criteria range. Oh, look, when I hit Tab, it jumps back to the extract sheet. but no problem. I know my criteria is here. Tab and copy to. I'm going to click A8 and then click OK. And just like that, from data here to a different sheet. Now I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to Control N. Control N opens up a new workbook. I can see it says Book 1. I'm immediately going to Control V and then point to the Smart tag and say, give me paste with original source column widths. I'm going to double click this sheet down here and call it Extract. Maybe Control and roll like that. I'm immediately F12 to save as, F12 to save as, and I'm going to save it somewhere that's smart, and I'm going to give it a good name. All right, you ready? Alt AQ. Only one row. I'm going to click here. Alt AQ. Now, copy to another location. And the list range, well, it's in a different workbook. So we simply click on the workbook. And I'm going to click on the sheet in the workbook. Yeah, here it is. I notice it puts a workbook reference in. I'm going to hit Tab. And when I hit Tab, it jumps me back to this the source workbook where we're going to dump our data. So criteria range. Tab. Copy to. I'm going to say A8 and then click OK. And just like that, it copied our data. We're in this workbook right here. I'm going to Control Tab. And we just got data from this workbook here, this sheet, AF7, right there. So that's going from a different workbook and getting data from that other workbook. All right, we're going to go back over to our excelisfun start. And one last very important example. I'm going to go to Extract, AF8. One of my favorite built-in features in Excel is extract unique records. And here's the deal. We often get, let me Control and roll. We often get data sets like this. And there's just lots of duplicates. Now, there is a remove duplicates. I basically have never used that ever. Remove duplicates actually permanently removes the duplicates. And so this method of using advanced filter to get at the unique records is a great way to retain the original data set and create a unique list somewhere else. Now, you can do it for the whole table, and it will give you, like if you have duplicate transactional records. But we're going to do it just for this column. And then I'm going to paste it right here. And again, in the data sets that we get have lots of duplicates, and I just want one occurrence of each customer name. All right, I'm going to go up to Advanced Filter, Alt AQ. Now that is unusual. What that means is I already ran, because it should be guessing like this. If you run this on a data set that's never had advanced filter or unique records run, it'll highlight the whole data set. So that's the thing you want to watch for. If you only want a single column, then you have to highlight that and highlight just the column. And be sure to include the field name here. Now I'm going to copy to another location. I'm going to scroll all the way up. Criteria range. Absolutely no criteria for us. However, you could mix a criteria range and our unique records. But for us, we're only interested in unique records. So in essence, I'm putting nothing there, and I'm going to say unique records only. And then copy to. Now I'm going to click in E1. Advanced filter, unique records only, will give us the field name and one occurrence of every item in the column. I'm going to click OK. Absolutely awesome. And why is that so awesome? You know, you have a data set like this, and you want just the sum total for each customer. So you just do advanced filter, unique records, and then you do your formula, something like equals count if. And then the range with the criteria will be this range right here, F4 to lock it, comma, the criteria is right there. So we're not going to use count if. We're going to use count ifs. 1, 2. That way we can have more than one criteria. So our first criteria range is the names, comma. That makes the criteria one cell to my left, relative cell reference, comma. And now criteria range 2 is going to be our numbers. Control Shift down arrow F4, comma. And the criteria, we're going to have to add our operator, comparative operator in our case. And it looks like greater than. And then I'm going to ampersand, Shift 7, so I can join the comparative operator with our actual number input in cell H5. I'm going to hit F4 on that to lock it going down. Close parentheses, Control Enter. Double click and send it down. And so that counts. We can see Carly, we had no sales to Carly. Advanced filter to get a unique list. Totally amazing. All right, so one last thing we want to talk about is we've been doing all these advanced filters on these sheets. And every single time, if we go back to sheet number AF6, every time we highlighted a criteria range and an extract area, the advanced filter created a defined name so that it can remember where the criteria range is and where the extract range is. So now I'm going to go look at that. Control F3, or you could go Name Manager right there on the Formulas tab. Control F3. And wow, look at all of those there. And you can read them. Refers to. And you can see which sheet each one came from. But all of these are created automatically. Now, what happens if you want to run a different set of criteria? So instead of 5, 3, maybe you wanted, I'm going to say 12 here. I'm going to change the criteria. All right, so we want to run our advanced filter a second time. Now, remember, it has a defined name that remembers there, and it also has a defined name that remembers these are the field names. And so let's just Alt-AQ and see if that's true. See how it's all filled in already? Those come from the fact that there are defined names. Now, the big caveat here is that if you want to run a different set of criteria, you have to clear your extract area. So I'm going to cancel this. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to clear. So you could go to the Home and then clear all there, or Alt-EAA. All right. The problem is if you have a bunch of records here and you extract, and the extract only gives you this many, the records below will still be there. So you absolutely want to clear it. All right, I'm going to run it. Alt-AQ. Copy to another location. It got the table right. It got the criteria range right. You can always collapse it, but you can see A3 to E4. Copy to range is correct also. I'm going to click OK. And so this time when we run this particular query, we get a few extra records here. All right. Now there is one other topic in advanced filter that I don't have in the book, but I'd like to show you an example. So I want to highlight just that right there. So I got a criteria area, some stuff up here, a data set in this extract area. I'm going to copy. And then I'm going to come over to AF8. And I want a sheet right there. So I'm going to click on the sheet after it. And I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut Shift F11 to insert a new sheet. And then I'm going to double click that sheet and call it AF9. Enter, and I'm going to Control V. The cursor's right there, Control V, and then point to my Smart Tag and click column width. I thought W would work, but all right. Now here's the extra little trick. I'm going to highlight all this and clear Alt-EAA. I'm going to delete the field name. I'm going to delete this here. And in this example, I want to show you how to use a true-false logical formula in a criteria area without a field name to help the data set extract records. Now, the advantage to this is you can have a single formula in a single cell that delivers true or false, and it will replace an entire column. So let's just imagine I'm going to do a simple example here. This is true TF. I'm going to add a new column. And this is common also. People add a new column, and then you can create any logical formula that delivers a true or a false and fill this whole column. And then you could call this TF, put a true here, and then run advanced filter. The advantage to this is you can get really fancy with your logical formula. And we've seen a bunch of examples throughout the book. I'm just going to do a simple one here. Equals, and this one equals, in quotes, Carlota. And logical test, we talked about the and function before. We can put more than one logical test, and they both have to come out true for the and to deliver a true into the cell. But logical 2 will be this. Relative cell reference is equal to Smith. Control Enter, double click and send it down. Now this is a silly example because we could easily do this one with our criteria up here. But we want to illustrate the point. This is a column filled with true and falses. So instead of filling up your spreadsheet with an extra column, your very first formula, and you have to be aware of the right cell references so that when you copy it down, it gives you the right true or false. But you can simply copy this one formula here, escape, paste it into a cell up here. And advanced filter will know, since that's the first formula from the first record here with our new column, it will know that it's supposed to do this. Now I'm going to remove this. I'm going to move it over here. So when I run the advanced filter, it's not considered part of the set. But the weird thing about this is any true-false formula can go here, but you got to leave the field name blank. So let's see if we can get this to work. Alt-AQ. Copy to another location. The criteria is blank field name, logical formula. Copy to right here, and then click OK. And so we have this one. Now that's a silly example, but let me show you another example. I'm going to move this back over here. Sometimes in auditing, you want to extract every 10th record or every 20th record or something like that. So we're going to look at something called the mod function. Now the mod is an interesting function. Equals mod. And what mod does is this. We go back to 5th grade when we learned division. If you say, hey, mod, the number is 3, comma, and we want to divide by another number, 2, the mod function gives you the remainder. Because remember, 3 divided by 2 is 1 with a remainder 1. So mod gives you the remainder of division. Right? So if I put 15 divided by 5. Oh, no, let's do 17. What's 17 divided by 5? Well, it's 3 with a remainder 2. That's interesting. Now, how in the world are we going to leverage that for an auditing situation where you want to extract every 10th record? Now, I actually don't want it every 10th record. Actually, I'm going to click Escape. I don't want it every 10th record. We have a small data set. So I want it every 3rd record. And I want to put a bit of criteria up here. I'm going to type a label, increment for record extraction. I'm going to say every 3. So this will be an important formula input. Now, we got to look at how the mod is going to do this. Strange little thing. Well, first, let's look at the rows function. Equals rows. All we're going to do for the mod is we want something right in the number argument that when we copy it down, it'll automatically increment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if there's 100 records, it'll increment 100 times. And then we'll divide it by 3. We'll see what that gives us, and we'll see if we can come up with a logical true-false formula. All right, so let's look at the rows. Equal rows. Rows is a function that if I give it that many rows, or like right there, it'll give me the number 6 because there's 6 rows there. But I want a formula that'll increment. It'll first tell me the number 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just going to use the range. And I'm actually going to click on a cell in the data set and then colon A9. Now, right now, that's kind of silly. It's that cell to that cell. But if I lock this first one, F4, F4, lock the row reference, now as I copy it down, well, right now, what did it give me? How many rows are from 9 to 9? 1. But how many, since that's locked, and that one's not, it means this 9 will turn to 10, 11, 12, 13. Absolutely a beautiful way to increment numbers inside of a formula. So 9 is locked, 10 is not. Right here, 9, how many rows from 9 to 11? There are 3. Now, let's use that inside of our mod. So mod is just going to take the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And in the numerator, the top, and we're going to divide it by what? 3 every single time. Now, one important thing about a true-false formula, you have to have a cell that's pointing into the data set. In our last example, our and, we had 2 cells that are pointing inside the data set. All right, so it's OK that this one's pointing there, but we need at least 1 inside the data set. Now I'm going to close parentheses. Let's just see what this gives us. You could probably already imagine it's going to give me 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0. Right? Every integer that we know, when we divide it by 3, it's either going to be remainder 1, remainder 2, or 0. Now, watch this. We could say F2 and say make this equal to 1. Right? I'm not going to put that. And then we get a true there, there, and there. Right? So it'd still be every third record. But I want to go with that 0. So I'm going to count. I'm going to say equal 0. But you could do equal 1, equal 2, equal 0, whatever you want. I'm going to say equal 0. And now we get a true, false all the way down. There's the true. The record should be extracted for auditing. True should be extracted for auditing. True. Now, this formula, just in our last example, copy the very first row as if we were copying it down the column. We copy that one. I copied and then hit in edit mode and hit escape. Now I'm going to come over here and paste. Whoops. Copy, escape, Control V. So there I have it, my true-false formula that will be copied down in memory, like that. Blank as a field name. I'm going to click in one cell, Alt-AQ. Copy to another location. Looks like I got the right data set. The criteria range A3 to A4. The extract range, that's fine. I'm going to click OK. And just like that, boom, boom, boom. So that's an example of a formula. At least I don't know how to do that with advanced filter criteria or regular filter. So then it's a situation where you don't have a good solution, but logical formula. And a lot of people just keep the column here, and there's no problem. They extract the records and then throw everything away. But if space is valuable and you can't add a lot of extra columns, then man, is that cool or what? All right, that's a lot of things about advanced filter. In our next video, we'll talk about text to column. All right, see you next video.